Purpose of joining the family. We're going to close on Coyote Pass soon.
I'm not selling.
Cody Brown's control collapse, Christmas chaos, and child neglect. It all started with a fight that no one could ignore. In Season 18, Episode 3 of the infamous reality series, tensions between Cody Brown and Janelle erupted in a way that exposed the true fragility of his authority. What should have been a festive discussion about Christmas preparations spiraled into chaos, revealing the raw, childish fury of a man terrified of losing control. Cameras captured the moments, but behind the staged drama was a deeper, darker story of manipulation, neglect, and the unraveling of a family under the weight of one man's ego. The central theme is clear. Cody Brown, long perceived as the patriarch with absolute authority, is a man whose need for control overrides empathy, fairness, and responsibility. The explosive argument with Janelle exposed cracks in his dominion, showing that even in a family structured to favor him, control is never absolute. This is not just a personal failing, it's a systemic collapse, where the carefully curated image of a harmonious household is shattered by unchecked emotion and favoritism. The first subtopic to examine is Cody's control issues during the Christmas debate. On the surface, it seemed like a minor disagreement about holiday plans, but the argument quickly escalated as Cody displayed fits of anger, pouting, and lashing out like a child denied a toy. Janelle, usually calm and composed, stood her ground, pushing back against his overbearing behavior for the first time in front of cameras. The clash was not merely about decorations or gift lists. It was a battle for authority, a rare moment when Cody faced the tangible threat of losing influence over decisions he considered exclusively his domain. Analysts observing the episode have noted that such outbursts are textbook narcissistic behavior. When control is challenged, the response is not negotiation, but rage, manipulation, and attempts to intimidate those around him. The second subtopic delves into Cody's neglect of Janelle's children. Beyond the Christmas argument, there is a pattern of indifference that runs throughout his interactions with his stepchildren. Cody consistently refused to engage with Janelle's children, leaving the responsibility of emotional care and daily supervision entirely on her shoulders. When conflicts arose, he attempted to coerce apologies from the children, blaming them for perceived disrespect, yet never held himself accountable for his neglectful actions. The children's refusal to respond was telling. They had grown accustomed to the pattern of favoritism and knew that emotional manipulation was a recurring tool in Cody's arsenal. Examining the timeline, the escalation is evident. Small slights and avoidance of responsibility turned into open favoritism toward his preferred spouse, Robyn, and visible disdain or disinterest toward Janelle's children. The Christmas confrontation marked a climax. What had been simmering under the surface, resentment, ignored needs, and unequal treatment, exploded into an undeniable display of dysfunction. It was both a personal failure and a public spectacle, revealing the consequences of allowing ego-driven control to dominate family dynamics. Psychologically, the impact on the children is profound. Feeling neglected and unseen, they are forced to navigate a household where love and attention are conditional, dependent on their mother's standing with Cody rather than their own needs. This environment fosters anxiety, low self-esteem, and long-term relational challenges. Janelle's children, already burdened by systemic favoritism, experienced firsthand the dangers of living under a parent whose authority is inseparable from self-interest. From a sociological perspective, Cody Brown's behavior illuminates the risks inherent in polygamous family structures where power is centralized. Control becomes not just a personal trait, but a structural force, affecting all interactions, decisions, and emotional bonds. The Christmas episode is illustrative. While on screen, the fight might appear dramatic or entertaining, in reality, it exposes the deep inequities and manipulation embedded in the household. Analysts point out that these patterns are rarely visible to casual viewers, but have enduring consequences for those living them. The dramatic arc continues with Kody's failure to accept accountability. Even after the confrontation, he sought to shift blame onto Janelle and her children, a classic act of gaslighting. His inability to recognize his own neglect, both emotionally and in practical care, highlights the narcissistic underpinnings of his control. By forcing apologies from the children while refusing to examine his behavior, he perpetuated a cycle of coercion, guilt, and compliance, undermining healthy family dynamics. The narrative of neglect is further evidenced in multiple incidents outside the Christmas conflict. Kody's selective attention, prioritizing Robyn and her children over others, compounded feelings of exclusion and marginalization. This favoritism was not incidental. It was strategic, ensuring that loyalty, resources, and emotional energy were concentrated where he perceived maximum personal benefit. The implications for the long-term cohesion of the family are stark. Children grow up learning that affection is transactional, and the family unit becomes a web of manipulation rather than a support system. In storytelling terms, the arc is tragic yet instructive. The audience witnesses the dissonance between the family's televised image and the underlying reality. Small disagreements escalate into confrontations that reveal character flaws, neglect, and systemic favoritism. Kody's control collapse during Christmas is a microcosm of decades-long patterns. The superficial unity of the household is a veneer, masking the chaos, emotional harm, and inequities beneath. Experts analyzing this episode note that when control is central to a parent's identity, any perceived challenge, whether from a spouse, child, or circumstance, triggers defensive, manipulative, or punitive responses. Kody's public display of anger, combined with private neglect, exemplifies the intersection of narcissism, authoritarianism, and parental irresponsibility. The result is not merely family discord but psychological harm, strained relationships, and enduring emotional scars for the children. In conclusion, the Christmas confrontation between Kody and Janelle in Season 18, Episode 3, serves as a stark revelation of his crumbling authority, selective neglect, and the prioritization of ego over responsibility. Janelle's assertiveness, the children's resistance, and Kody's inability to accept accountability highlight the unsustainable nature of a household dominated by control and favoritism. The spectacle captured on television is both a warning and a lens into the lived reality, a family fractured by neglect, a patriarch obsessed with dominance, and children navigating the consequences of conditional love. This episode is more than a reality TV moment. It is a case study in how unchecked control, narcissism, and favoritism can destabilize familial bonds, leaving long-lasting effects on emotional health, relationships, and the structure of family itself. Truli's health crisis and the Brown family's financial collapse. It began with a quiet alarm, a child in pain, a mother desperate for help, and a father absent in the moments that mattered most. Truli, the young daughter of Christine Brown, was suffering from a severe kidney condition that required urgent attention. Her symptoms were escalating, yet the response from Cody Brown, the patriarch of the sprawling polygamous household, was astonishingly negligent. Instead of prioritizing his child's health, Kody was occupied with tasks for Robyn's household, folding laundry, tending to his favorite spouse's comfort, and leaving the most critical responsibilities to others. The reality behind the cameras was starkly different from the staged reality the public saw, a dangerous combination of neglect, mismanagement, and misplaced priorities that placed a child's life in jeopardy. The overarching theme of this story is clear. Cody Brown's failure as a father and household head is not merely a personal flaw, but a systemic consequence of his choices. The polygamous structure that amplifies favoritism, and the performative nature of their televised lives. The Truli incident exposes the fragility of a family system where loyalty and attention are distributed not based on need, but on status within the family hierarchy. In this case, Robyn and her household received undivided focus, while Christine's child suffered, highlighting the dangers of selective care and parental negligence. The first subtopic to examine is the sequence of Truli's health crisis. Reports indicate that the family delayed seeking professional medical attention despite clear signs of distress. Christine, aware of her daughter's worsening condition, repeatedly asked Kody for support. Instead of providing assistance, Kody diverted her pleas, citing trivial commitments at Robyn's house. The delay was not minor. Each passing hour increased the risk to Truli's life. This negligence exemplifies a critical failure of duty, magnified by Kody's prioritization of appearances and favoritism over real responsibility. Analysts and child welfare experts note that such neglect, particularly in a household with multiple competing demands, can have long-term consequences both physically and psychologically for children. Moving to the financial collapse of the Brown family, the narrative becomes even more striking. Despite 4 adult members contributing income, the household consistently lived in a state of near poverty. Kody's approach to finances was erratic and opportunistic, favoring schemes that promised quick returns over steady management. Multi-level marketing ventures, half-baked businesses, and opportunistic television contracts were pursued while the essentials of running a home, providing for children's health care, and ensuring stability were largely neglected. The household's survival depended primarily on Janelle's diligence, highlighting both the structural imbalance and Kody's abdication of responsibility. Financial mismanagement intertwined with emotional neglect, creating a household environment fraught with tension and insecurity. The third subtopic involves the infamous candy incident, a seemingly trivial event that reveals deeper patterns of conflict, favoritism, and tension among the wives. When Leon and McElty were found short 10 cents for candy, Mary faced criticism, creating resentment that simmered for years. Christine's memoir details that Mary frequently engaged in mental and emotional control tactics, contributing to a toxic environment within the home. Yet, the reality is more nuanced. Each wife participated in power struggles and interpersonal manipulation, and the family's dysfunction was a collective product of the environment Kody created, where hierarchy and favoritism intensified rivalries. The candy incident symbolizes how even minor disputes were amplified under conditions of unequal power, favoritism, and competitive positioning, further eroding trust and emotional stability among family members. Analyzing the timeline of events, the Truli health crisis represents the apex of Kody's negligence, while financial mismanagement and minor interpersonal conflicts, such as the candy incident, are indicative of long-term systemic dysfunction. Truli's suffering, compounded by the delayed response and inadequate care, serves as a dramatic turning point, bringing underlying problems into sharp focus. The narrative demonstrates a clear cause and effect progression. Unchecked favoritism, neglect of essential responsibilities, and obsessive focus on appearances led directly to real-life consequences for the most vulnerable members of the family. From a psychological and sociological perspective, these incidents underscore the dangers of living in a household dominated by hierarchy, favoritism, and selective attention. Children learn quickly who is favored, who is neglected, and who holds real power. The consequences for Truli were immediate, but for other children in the family, the lessons were subtle yet equally profound, shaping their expectations, emotional responses, and sense of security. The interwoven personal, financial, and health crises illustrate how structural neglect, both in terms of attention and resources, manifests in tangible harm, creating an unstable environment where survival often hinges on favoritism rather than fairness. Dramatically, the story is compounded by the performative nature of the Brown family's public persona. While cameras documented smiling faces and staged cohesion, the behind-the-scenes reality involved crises left unattended, children's medical needs ignored, and financial irresponsibility threatening household stability. The juxtaposition between television-friendly narratives and real-life neglect adds layers of irony, emphasizing the divergence between perception and reality. Kody's priorities, luxury cars, appearances, and attention to favored spouses, contrast starkly with the very real, life-threatening needs of his children, highlighting a pattern of narcissistic and manipulative behavior. The cumulative effect of these incidents paints a portrait of a family system in crisis. Truli's delayed medical care, financial mismanagement, and interpersonal conflicts like the candy incident converge to reveal a household where appearances are meticulously maintained while essential care is neglected. Each element feeds into the next. Financial instability exacerbates stress, favoritism fuels resentment, and neglect of basic needs threatens health and safety. The dramatic tension is real, with consequences far beyond television drama, illustrating the cost of living under a patriarch whose decisions are guided more by ego than responsibility. In terms of broader implications, the Truli incident serves as a cautionary tale for viewers and society at large. It highlights the potential dangers of concentrated power within a family structure, particularly when combined with public scrutiny and performance incentives. Children's welfare can be compromised when leadership prioritizes appearances, personal gratification, or favoritism over their immediate needs. Experts stress that structural safeguards, accountability, and equitable care are essential in preventing such crises. Yet in the Brown household, these systems were largely absent, leaving the most vulnerable exposed to harm. Furthermore, the financial collapse and reliance on opportunistic ventures illuminate a pattern of irresponsibility that extends beyond parenting. Kody's preoccupation with schemes for quick wealth, rather than stable income and household management, reflects a broader pattern of neglect and mismanagement. Janelle's sustained efforts to keep the family afloat highlight the imbalance between visible authority and actual competence, reinforcing the theme that control and charisma do not equate to responsible leadership. The interpersonal dynamics among the wives add yet another layer of complexity. Power struggles, favoritism, and emotional manipulation, exemplified in events like the candy incident, reveal how structural inequities and competition for resources and attention destabilize family relationships. Christine's memoir provides rare insight into these dynamics, exposing the human cost behind staged narratives and illustrating how even minor disputes are magnified in a context of unequal power distribution. Ultimately, the narrative threads, from Truli's health crisis to financial instability to everyday conflicts, converge to present a family in chronic crisis. The dramatic tension is compounded by the reality that behind every staged smile and televised interaction lies neglect, favoritism, and structural failure. Truli's near miss with serious health consequences serves as the most immediate and visceral example of this dysfunction, making the stakes painfully real and the consequences deeply human. This story is more than a reality television episode. It is an unfolding case study of parental neglect, systemic favoritism, and financial irresponsibility with life-threatening consequences. The Brown family's public facade masks a private reality where children's well-being, emotional health, and security are constantly negotiated against the patriarch's ego, obsession with appearances, and misplaced priorities. The sequence of events demonstrates a tragic arc. Small, seemingly mundane incidents, like missing candy, sibling rivalries, or uneven attention, escalate into crises with tangible human cost. Truli's health scare is both the culmination of years of neglect and a stark reminder of the dangers of placing performance, favoritism, and ego above the most fundamental responsibilities of parenthood. The family's systemic collapse is both cautionary and instructive, highlighting the intersection of public persona, private neglect, and the moral and practical failures of a patriarch who misprioritized duties. Viewers witness not only the consequences of Kody's neglect, but also the resilience of mothers like Christine and Janelle, who navigate impossible circumstances to protect their children. Cody Brown's manipulation and the family's collapse. It started with whispers, hints of tension, and small cracks that would soon widen into chasms. Cody Brown, patriarch of a high-profile polygamous household, was demanding far more than affection from his wives. He was imposing control under the guise of intimacy. Christine Brown's memoir exposes a reality that television cameras never captured. Kody's massage requests were not innocent shoulder rubs, but explicit sexual demands disguised as gestures of love. Christine describes feeling dehumanized and manipulated, a servant to his desires rather than a partner in a marriage. This was not an isolated incident, but a recurring pattern of coercion and emotional exploitation that ultimately drove her to leave. The central theme here is the intersection of manipulation, favoritism, and systemic dysfunction. Kody's behavior reflects a patriarchal structure in which the power imbalance allows one spouse, typically the favored, to dictate attention, affection, and resources, leaving others neglected, humiliated, and disempowered. Christine's departure marked the beginning of a chain reaction. The carefully constructed facade of a unified family began to crumble, exposing decades of inequality, coercion, and emotional neglect. The first subtopic to consider is the nature of Kody's demands. Christine recounts repeated instances where he sought sexual gratification under the pretense of a massage, framing it as love, but treating it as a transaction. This exploitative dynamic created an environment of fear and shame, leaving Christine emotionally compromised, while Kody remained unaccountable. Analysts observing these patterns note the psychological implications of such coercion: diminished self-worth, anxiety, and a pervasive sense of powerlessness in the partner subjected to persistent manipulation. In Kody's case, his insistence on prioritizing his own desires over mutual respect eroded trust and destabilized marital dynamics, ultimately contributing to the family's fragmentation. The second subtopic is Robyn's arrival and the resulting disruption. Robyn entered the household with a strategic awareness that allowed her to claim Kody's attention and resources. The memoir depicts her as a sweet victim in public, but behind closed doors, she exercised influence and control, effectively redirecting family wealth, attention, and emotional energy toward herself. Kody, enamored with Robyn's perceived loyalty and allure, allocated his time and resources almost exclusively to her, leaving other wives and children marginalized. This favoritism magnified existing inequalities, creating a toxic hierarchy in which access to Kody's attention became synonymous with power and survival. The third subtopic addresses financial exploitation and secret accounts. According to Christine, both Kody and Robyn siphoned funds from the family's collective resources for personal benefit. This financial manipulation exacerbated tensions among the wives, limiting their ability to meet their own and their children's needs. Money, in this system, became a weapon of control, a tangible measure of favoritism and influence. The knives in the kidneys scene, often dramatized for television, is an ironic projection. While it depicted family conflict, the real betrayal was Kody himself, manipulative, secretive, and self-serving. The impact of these actions extended beyond finances, undermining familial trust and creating long-lasting emotional scars. The fourth subtopic is the ultimate outcome: family fragmentation. The combined manipulation of Kody and Robyn forced the gradual exit of the other three wives, each seeking autonomy and relief from coercion. Children observed the misuse of power firsthand, learning lessons about parental neglect, favoritism, and abuse of authority. The memoir emphasizes that this exposure, while painful, may prevent the next generation from repeating the same patterns. The psychological resilience of these children is contrasted sharply with Kody's self-centered governance, highlighting the enduring consequences of manipulative familial structures. Analyzing the timeline, the escalation is clear. Kody's coercive behavior toward Christine, the prioritization of Robyn, the misappropriation of funds, and the subsequent exit of other wives follow a logical progression from small abuses of power to systemic family collapse. The narrative moves from private emotional manipulation to public manifestations of favoritism and neglect, illustrating how intimate coercion can ripple outward to destabilize an entire household. Trivial conflicts and personal requests mask a deeper strategy of control, culminating in a household fracture that is both dramatic and instructive. From a sociological standpoint, this case exemplifies the risks inherent in concentrated patriarchal power within polygamous family systems. Favoritism, coercion, and resource misallocation create conditions where children and spouses are pitted against one another, emotional needs are subordinated to power dynamics, and ethical accountability is circumvented. Kody's fixation on control and self-interest, combined with Robyn's strategic alignment, produced a system that rewarded compliance and punished autonomy, demonstrating how structural inequities can perpetuate harm over decades. Dramatically, the narrative is heightened by the contrast between public image and private reality. On screen, the family appeared cohesive, cooperative, and loving. Behind the scenes, Christine and other wives endured emotional exploitation, coercion, and neglect. Kody's manipulation was multidimensional, emotional, financial, and sexual, creating an environment of fear, dependence, and resentment. Robyn's calculated maneuvering amplified these dynamics, ensuring that Kody's attention and resources were concentrated where she could exert the most influence. The cumulative effect is a portrait of systemic abuse. Each action, whether it was Kody's sexual coercion, financial manipulation, or favoritism toward Robyn, contributed to a network of control that gradually dismantled familial cohesion. The family's eventual fragmentation was not sudden but the predictable result of sustained inequities and abuses, demonstrating the destructive potential of unchecked patriarchal power when combined with manipulative alliances. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel.